Welcome to our 5 on 5. I'm pleased to be joined today by Dave Smigelski. He's the editor of the Rogue Valley Times. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks for having me.
Fascinating story you guys have been working on this week. A 5-part series began on Sunday, ending today, about the death of a caregiver in East Medford who died after a terribly violent attack in a group home. A lot to cover here, but let's start with the attack. What do we know about what happened to the PCL, Partnerships in Community Living employee who died, Bobby Collada?
What we know is that she was working alone in a house, and when her relief showed up for the next shift, he found puddles of blood in the living room, couldn't find Bobby, walked around the house, found her on the other side of the house in a bathroom with a broken neck and a fractured skull. And he called 911, explained what had happened, and that's how this whole thing came to be known.
Yeah, and so she couldn't speak very well, if I'm remembering correctly, and so he didn't really quite know what happened. He just obviously saw the damage in front of him and how terribly she was hurt. So police came, she was taken to the hospital. How did it end for her?
She was in the hospital for 5 weeks. She was conscious for 3 days during those 5 weeks. Ultimately, they had to do brain surgery on her skull to relieve pressure from a brain bleed that she had. They were trying to stabilize the brain bleed so that they could operate on her broken neck. She never recovered from the head surgery and passed away on March 27th.
The gentleman she was able to speak a little bit to, I can't remember if it's her family or PCL or hospital employees, but I believe she said correct me if I'm wrong here, 300-pound man who she was taking care of, one of the people in this group home, developmentally disabled, who may or may not have had a short temper, she believes may have attacked her from behind. Potentially, we don't know, of course, what happened. There was no witnesses beyond these two people here.
Beyond the person who was hurt. Mm-hmm. So what she told her family members was that the last thing she remembered was out of the corner of her eye, she saw this gentleman coming up behind her, and that was the last thing that she remembered for quite a while. During those 3 days that she was awake in the hospital, she did start to remember more. She remembered that she had been trying to help him set up his Wi-Fi, that the person had become irritated with her, that it wasn't happening faster. He began to pinch her and hurt her, and she asked him to stop. When he didn't stop, she got up to leave the room, and that's apparently when he followed her out of the room, and at that point it would be speculation to say what occurred.
Yeah, well said. And this was police, Medford police arrived with Mercy Flights, I believe you said, but no police report was filed, at least at that point. Why is that?
Because when her relief called 911, it was reported as an accident. He hadn't been there. He didn't know what happened. He just found someone terribly hurt, mm-hmm. and they believed that it was an accident. So it was viewed as routine. The police went there simply to escort the paramedics. They weren't there because it was an investigation.
So many more questions about your investigation. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our 5 on 5. Again, we're here with Dave Smigelski, the editor for the Rogue Valley Times. We're talking about this incredible series you guys have going on this week, 5-part series, just ending earlier today about this Medford employee who was brutally attacked, it seems, I should say. Your reporter, Buffy Pollock, who's worked this for you, how did she find out about this whole, and this is an elaborate series?
We got an anonymous phone call from someone who said there's been a death at a local group home and nobody's looking into it. It was a person who was actually executive director of another mental health agency in the valley, and so we took his information seriously. Buffy, we didn't know where it had happened, we didn't know when it had happened, we didn't know the person's name who was injured. All we knew that it happened at a group home operated by PCL. So we did all the things that you would normally do when you're trying to track down a death. We went to the police, we went to the sheriff's office, we called Mercy Flights, we called the state, we called the health department, and nobody knew about it.
That part upsets me. That nobody knew about this, but she didn't stop there.
No, Well, what she did, the only piece of information that we knew for sure was that it happened at a PCL group home. So what Buffy did is she went to the PCL website, found a list of employees who had been named Employee of the Month. She took those names and she cross-referenced them against obituaries, and she was able to find out that Bobby Collada had been the person who had died. From there, she was able to contact friends and family, and little by little, the story of how she died came out.
Was this a unique situation? What happened at PCL?
That's probably the biggest eye-opener for us, is as we dug into the story, we realized that Bobby Collada was far from the only caregiver who's been injured. In fact, we've talked to more than a dozen employees, caregivers, who have all suffered serious injuries, including a woman who suffered a miscarriage, people who have had broken bones, dislocated jaws, teeth knocked out, bites. It's a very dangerous profession.
Wow. Where does this go from here? We talked about all these different levels of from local police to the state, about how nobody seemed to know anything about it. That's changed now with your reporting.
Now there are investigations happening. The Medford Police Department's opened an investigation. OSHA has opened an investigation. The Department of Disability Services is investigating. There are investigations happening across numerous different arenas, but it's a very much of a moving target. We continue to get calls now from people who, since we've reported this, who are giving us more information. So where it goes from here really is hard to say for sure.
Well, and it's wonderful and obviously powerful work that you and your team, Buffy Pollock, the reporter on this, sorry she couldn't join us, but it's very good work, and we certainly appreciate you coming down and talking to us about it.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Greg.
much, Dave.
Appreciate it.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back.